Good morning, everybody. Waukesha County Court Judge, Chief Judge of the Third Judicial District, and conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jennifer Dorow, is our very special guest today, Wednesday, February 8th, 2023. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and we are streaming today's live show on DrydenWire's Facebook page, also on our YouTube channel. So however you may be watching, welcome and thank you for joining us. Special thank you to businessman, attorney, and former Wisconsin legislator Adam Jarchow for filling in for Fitzy on yesterday's Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show. And a reminder, tomorrow, it's the second Thursday of the month, so 7th Congressional District Representative Tom Tiffany will be back for our monthly Breakfast with Tiffany show. But today, we welcome, for the first time on the show, Waukesha County Court Judge, conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jennifer Dorow. Jennifer, good morning.
Good morning. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Sounds like you've had a pretty busy morning.
I have, so I really appreciate you adjusting the start time. Thank you so much.
It's an honor and a privilege to have you on anyhow. So I don't care if it's 8:30 or 9 o'clock. That's just great. So how are you? Thanks for coming on, by the way. And there's a lot we have to get to. I think we want to try to run this. You have like court or something else coming up here soon, so we're going to try to stick to 30 minutes today. And there's this, there's a candidate Dorow, and there's a judge Dorow, but there's also Jennifer Dorow. So if it's okay with you, since this is the first time that you've been on, why don't we start with Jennifer Dorow? Let us get to know you. So we can start wherever you want to start. We can start with where were you born, where were you raised?
Before we get to that, if you wouldn't mind, yesterday was a hard day in Milwaukee and southeastern Wisconsin because a police officer was shot and killed in the line of duty. And I would just love to take a moment of silence for him and for his family. It's something that hits really hard for me, hits home for me. And if we could do that, I'd really appreciate it.
Certainly.
Thank you.
So let's get to know you a little bit. And by the way, law enforcement, and we didn't really get a chance to talk. Usually I get a chance to talk to someone that's coming out for the first time, but we are huge supporters of law enforcement here at DrydenWire. My father was a sheriff for almost 30 years here in Washburn County. My sister's in the FBI. My brother's a chief of police. My uncle's a detective in the Chicago area. So law enforcement, yeah, we take that pretty seriously. So I really appreciate that moment of silence. Thank you.
Thank you. Same here. My husband spent 10 years at the city of Waukesha Police Department. And then, he left as a sergeant. Then he took over as the associate dean at the local technical college, but in charge of all of the law enforcement programs training. And then spent, after doing that for about, I think it was 15 years, he spent 3 years at the Department of Homeland Security as an undersecretary.
What?
Yeah. So we are... law enforcement is very important to my family. When I say I started off with why I wanted to do that, of course, for the officer and his family, but it hits home personally. I lost my uncle in the line of duty in 1985. So I really thank you for letting me take that moment of silence.
Oh my goodness. So you hope, not hopefully, but I do want to ask you about that, what you had just mentioned, but I'm assuming that's going to come up in kind of this little bio about you and getting to where you are now. So let's go back to Jennifer. Where were you born? Where were you raised?
Born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My family moved out to Waukesha when I was 7 years old, and I've been in Waukesha County ever since. So born and raised in Wisconsin, and this is my home. Love this state. Same for my husband. He was born and raised in Wisconsin as well. So Jennifer spent time at Waukesha South High School. That's where I graduated from in 1988. So I'll give you a little hint of how old I am. Little known fact about me, because some people always want to say, what don't we know about you? So there's two things I like to tell people. One is I have a twin sister. Her name is Jacqueline, and one of my best friends. And then second, I held a state record in the 100-meter high hurdles for 22 years.
What? How high? Wait, you said how? What was it? Hurdles?
Hurdles. So yes. So they're only 33 inches. They get a lot higher if you're a guy. But set that record in 1988. It actually was broke The weekend I had my daughter, and let me tell you, that young lady, she's going to get that record back in the family.
Love it. Love it. So were you there? Like, actually, this is so timely because last night LeBron James just passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the all-time scoring leader, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar was in the audience. And I remember watching. I didn't watch the game, but I saw this morning on SportsCenter, and he was there. And every time he made a basket, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar is like, he wasn't like quite that way, but it was. I don't know. Are you happy that someone did, or is it? But it sounds like
It was,
maybe your daughter's already been tasked with getting that back. So
it
did
was
you go to
great.
that thing?
It was great to hold it for 22 years. It's one of those weird records, at least in my opinion, where you really need good competition to win. And that's when I set the record. It was myself and another girl. We kind of went back and forth all season, and just the right conditions. Same thing in when it was broke in 2010, and some really good competition. I was not there because I was having a baby.
Oh, right. Yeah, forgot about that. I mean, just that little thing, having a baby. So you leave high school, you graduate, I think you said 88, and then what? Did you know at that point what you wanted to do, or did you go to college with unknown, or did you I'm assuming you went to college. Well, of course you had
Yes,
to.
I did. I actually ran in college. I started out at Drake University. When I was in high school, I said, I want to be in broadcast communication. I want to be a reporter. And so that was what I studied. I got a degree in broadcast communication. I spent 2 years at Drake University, and then I transferred to Marquette University, ran track at both universities, lettered at both, and then graduated in 1992. And by that time, I shift my focus and I decided I wanted to go to law school. I took a gap year where I worked as a legal secretary. My advice to all you young lawyer wannabe that you should really work in a law office as a non-lawyer, as either the receptionist, as a assistant, paralegal before you go to law school and become a lawyer, because you will have a much better appreciation for your staff and understand that they're part of a very important
Did
team.
that also help you decide? So you said that you decided you wanted to go to law school and then had this 1 year off, or was it afterwards? So did this, when you went, I guess my question is, when you went and you worked there for that year, did that encourage you? Did that make you, after being in that environment, make you go, yes, this is definitely, I want to be a part of all of this? Or is it, well, I mean, I don't know. It wasn't that great, but I still want to do it.
No, I actually knew I wanted to go, and then I needed to take the LSAT. And so I wanted to work, and I decided to
Okay.
work in the legal field, actually just solidified what I wanted to do. And then, got my LSAT done, applied to law school, was accepted, and then went to Regent University School of Law, which is in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
Why there, out of curiosity, or any particular reason?
Yes, very much so. So, two things. One is it was a faith centered approach as well. That was something that was unique about that law school. They also housed and still do the American Center for Law and Justice. And I had a particular interest in First Amendment religious liberty law, and that was the draw to that school. When I was there, though, I had a professor who had been a prosecutor and attorney general of Guam. I became his research assistant, and I absolutely fell in love with criminal law. Not worked, but interned at a prosecuting office my last year, and decided that I wanted to come back home, always coming back home, never not coming back home, but wanted to pursue being a prosecutor. And so then I came home, started working, and ultimately in 2000, started working at the DA's office in Waukesha County.
Faith centered. So, like my sister went to Indiana University, or Indiana Wesleyan University, Christian college. And actually, her son, my nephew, just started up in this college in northern Minnesota, but it's a Christian college. I don't know if they're actually referred to as Christian colleges, but when you say faith centered, I literally didn't know that there was like a law school type thing where that is an option.
Yes, we signed a statement of faith as part of the admission process, and we actually had extra class time and other extracurricular activities that we shared our common faith about. And there were some classes as well that were dedicated to looking at the law from a biblical perspective, or the natural law. And then, of course, all of the normal law school classes as well. So it was a wonderful experience.
I literally did not know that existed. Faith-centered law schools. I knew about them as colleges, but not actually. Well, it's still a college, but you know what I mean. I didn't realize that that was something you could actually do. So hey, just learned something new. So you get your degree. I'm assuming. Did you have to pass the bar at some point? Don't you?
I did.
And I've heard that sometimes it takes a few go rounds to get that done, and it's okay if it took you more than one.
Just one time.
Okay. Was it as stressful as everyone says that it is?
It was okay. It's a long couple of days. I think been a while, but we had to take a multi-state bar exam. And then there's the Wisconsin bar exam as well over 2 days. And so, a lot of essays, a lot of writing, but I studied for it really hard over the summer and it worked out okay.
So then what did you do? You get to, you passed the bar, you graduated, you must be in ballpark it here, what, mid-20s? Late 20s? Yeah. Somewhere in there. And so what did you do?
So my husband, who I'm married to, of course, he and I dated throughout law school. By the time I graduated, we were engaged, and he was a city of Waukesha police officer at the time. And so, of course, came back home, and we got married in 1998. And I wanted to be a prosecutor in my home county, in Waukesha County, and they have a tradition of hiring from their legal intern pool of applicants because they're close to Marquette University. And so they're students at Marquette and sometimes from UW-Madison are able to be interns. And so it took me a few years because they didn't really have an opening, but in 2000, there was an opening, or maybe the end of 1999. And then I was hired by then District Attorney Paul Bucher. And when I was working there, literally my husband and I, the law and order couple, he would arrest them and I would prosecute them.
I was literally just thinking that. What's your husband's name?
His name is Brian.
Brian. So was Brian like in support of all of this? Was it, yeah, this is going to be great? Or listen, honey, you don't want to be a part of this world?
No, he was very, very supportive. And still is. I wouldn't be doing what I am today without him.
Well, that's probably true too. Right. So you get that job there, and now we're in what, 2000? Yes. About? Okay. How long were you there?
I was there for just about 4 years. Mm-hmm. And prior to that, I actually did municipal prosecution. I was in private practice for about 3 years as well. And then we had two of our children, two of the three, in kind of short order in 2003 and 2004. So we made a choice in 2004 for the family that I would leave the district attorney's office, go into private practice, and enjoy a little bit more flexibility raising our two young boys at that time, and did that for 7 years until I was appointed by Scott Walker to serve on the trial court bench in Waukesha. The appointment was in 2011, but I took the bench on January 17th of 2012.
So 2011, 12. How does that work? So appointments, for people who don't know, so you didn't have to run for anything, correct?
No, I did. There was an opening because my predecessor had been appointed to the Court of Appeals because of a vacancy. So when there's a vacancy in a judge position and then it's filled by the governor appoints, and then you're on the ballot either the next spring or sometimes depending on when the person steps down from that seat, you can be on the bench for over a year. But in my case, I was on the ballot right away in the spring.
So it's one of those things where if it was, they announce that they're going to be leaving, and so therefore creating the vacancy, and if it's in, March, well, we're already passing our election time, so that's going to have to be on next year's election. But if it's in like October, then okay, we have enough time where we can do an election in a few months.
The key date is December 1. So if it's before December 1, because that's when you circulate nomination papers for any judicial races, the month of December. So
what month was this for you? I'm sorry, I think you already said it, but I was writing something down. How long were you appointed before you ran?
So I took the bench on January 17th, and I was on the ballot in April.
Okay. So what was that experience like?
Well, it went very well because I was such a strong candidate that no one ran against me.
Oh, fantastic. Winning by default. That's the only way I ever win, by the way. Um, so, and those are appointments are 6 years?
Those are, you're elected to a 6-year term. Those
6 years.
terms start August 1, and then every 6 years you run for reelection.
Got it. So when was your term? You had to run again. I'm sorry. I'm already assuming that you just ran again.
I did,
Okay. So what year was that about?
2018.
2018. And did you have an opponent that time?
Did not.
Fantastic. That's great. You know how much money you probably have saved in 2 different elections? That's the way to go. Okay, so you ran again. Why did you decide to run again? Or I should say, or ask, is there, at that point, when you were contemplating, do I run again? And you and Brian talked, was there any thought of, maybe I should do something else? Maybe not a different career field, maybe still a judge, but maybe I want to look at a different area in this law field. Or was it, nope, we were 100% all in, run for a reelection?
So my third child entered in 2010, and so when I first took the bench, she was only about a year and a half, and um, and so there were times, yes, definitely thought about, should I run for the Supreme Court? Should I run for another position? And ultimately, that decision was made in 2022. But
Oh,
yes, had thought about it, no doubt. As I mentioned, my husband uh, was appointed by President Trump to serve in the Department of Homeland Security. So we knew that was going on before he took that position in March of 2018. And so that involved him living out there during the week, coming home on the weekends. And so with
mm,
three kids, two of whom were in high school at the time, not no one of driving age, it was really important to support him in that incredibly important work that he was doing. And so that kind of foreclosed some, opportunities for me at that time.
mm.
Uh, and here I am.
Well, so I was going to ask about president. So I guess Darlene said that you should run for president.
Thank you.
Yeah, so speaking of president, you had said that the President Trump had appointed your husband to the Homeland Security position, right? Was there
Yes.
a phone call involved in that? I'm just curious.
There were, I'm sure, many phone calls and meetings and things of that nature.
Sure.
But, I don't care who you are and who the president is. When a president of the United States asks you to serve, you serve your country.
Yeah, I know. Who would say no to that? I don't know. I don't know if I like that last tweet. Who cares? Are you kidding? The president's called you. You take the job. Just saying. Okay, so to kind of put a bow on this, your time as the judge in this one specific area, which you're still at that position, right?
I am.
Yeah.
I'm
So,
still working.
you're at that, and I do want to bring up because you're also. I thought I'd written down somewhere you were you're the chief judge of the Third Judicial District. So I want to ask you, what does that entail? Actually, let's just start right there. Chief Judge of the Third Judicial District. How did that come to be, and when?
So I have been on the bench for 11 years,
Hmm.
and for 9 of those 11 years, I've been in some key leadership positions. So it started when there are, when I first started, there were 10 judicial districts, but now there are 9.
Hmm.
And so that's an appointment by the Wisconsin Supreme Court to some trial court judges to help oversee the trial court system. And so my predecessor in the Third Judicial District asked me to be his deputy chief in 2014, and I did that until 2017. He retired. He actually is now our director of state courts. And then the Supreme Court, by appointment, selected me as one of 9 chief judges, and I'm in my third consecutive term. And in June of this past year, my colleagues selected me to chair that committee, what we affectionately call the Chief of the Chiefs.
Nice. Oh, I like that. Chief of the Chiefs. Put that on a business card.
I
I
know,
love it.
right?
Or in your Facebook status. Chief of Chiefs. Love it. So there's an article. So I looked this morning. It was on PBS Wisconsin website. I think this was from early January. And it was kind of spotlighting the 4 candidates. And it says here, and I'm just reading it verbatim, 2023 Wisconsin Supreme Court election is shaping up to be the most expensive in state history and could up being one of the most consequential as well. The winner of the seat will succeed Justice Patience Roggensack, if I'm saying that correctly, who is retiring after serving 2 full 10-year terms on the state's high court. The winner will also determine the ideological makeup of the court for at least the next 2 years and set the balance of power between conservative and liberal justices. The reason I'm bringing that up is, why did you decide to run for judge? Was this a part of it? If this wasn't going to determine the, as PBS Wisconsin says, the ideological makeup of the court, would you have run?
When I considered my 11 years on the bench, that Justice Roggensack is retiring, looking at my depth and breadth of experience, this was the time for me to run. It is important that the people of Wisconsin elect a justice who is going to, honor the rule of law, who will understand the very clear separation of powers between the legislature, the executive, and the judicial branch, who will always follow the Constitution as written and never legislate from the bench. And so when folks like PBS talk about this being an important election, it really is, because there are 2 judicial conservatives that are running, and there are 2 left leaning, and I would say progressive activist candidates who want to transform Wisconsin by judicial fiat, meaning they want to take a 7-member court and by a vote of 4-3 decide policy in Wisconsin and usurp the power of the legislature to be the body that sets policy. I believe that the role of a judge is to apply the law as written, that politics have absolutely no place in the courts, not from a justice, not from a judge. And I'm running because it's so very important to the people of Wisconsin that the rule of law is what governs our courts. Because without the rule of law, we won't have stability, we don't have predictability, we won't have reliability. There's not much check on the court. A few cases might make their way up to the U.S. Supreme Court, but for the most part, right, the Supreme Court is the last word on what the law is in Wisconsin. And so it's really, really important that the voters and the people of Wisconsin understand the distinction and what's really at stake with this election.
I am a man of faith. I, love my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and, everything that comes with that. You went to a college, law school that was faith-centered. There are a lot of these topics that come up, or people, discussions that happen where my faith, because my highest authority, of course, is, the Bible. But, the Constitution's right below it, but it's still not at the highest. At the same time, there are some things that, I can't allow that to actually influence exactly how I kind of view things and what we should or shouldn't do as a society. It's just, these are my beliefs and what works in our house, but maybe not for everybody else. How is that going to play a role, or maybe how has it, as you've been a judge already? And should anyone be concerned that, she did go to a faith-based law school? How is that going to influence her when she's on the bench?
Yeah. One of the core beliefs that I have as a jurist is my unwavering commitment to be fair and impartial. That means my personal views, my policy preferences, they don't impact what I do as a judge. I like to explain it this way. A judge wears a robe for 2 reasons. The first reason is it is a sign of authority, but the other reason is that it's a reminder to not only the people and the litigants sitting before me, but to me, that those personal beliefs are shielded, right? That I cover them up so that they don't influence the decisions that I make. You think of the image that we have in our justice system about Lady Justice. There's two things. One, she wears a blindfold, and two, she has equally balanced scales that she's holding. And that should be the core of every justice and judge, to honor that. But that's what's at stake here, because there's two candidates, and the leading liberal left leaning activist progressive, that's how she describes herself as a progressive, is openly campaigning on a political agenda. You would think she's running for governor, running for the legislature, to be a senator, not as a judge. That should concern everyone in Wisconsin, because that is a complete disregard for the separation of powers that our Constitution has set up.
Yeah, I think this is we were talking about this. I think when either Adam Jarko yesterday or maybe Fitzy and I, for our weekly shows, the Barron County Sheriff and I would do a weekly show, and it was, I think we were talking about Supreme Court race, and it was kind of like cops pulling someone over and or getting a tip or something that someone has a marijuana grow house, and they go and they personally think that, I don't think marijuana should be illegal. Well, fine. Good for you. But that's the law. You're a cop. Do your job. And it's really been surprising me on how, when we look at this Supreme Court race, and maybe that's really shining a spotlight on all the other judges' races that we're now going to start paying attention to, that, yeah, just do that. Just do that. Just, you have one job. Just do it. I don't understand. Well, why are we adding all this other stuff in? That's for other people to do.
Yeah, you asked me if there were some examples, and I have a couple, and they center around the right to have an attorney represent you and the right to represent yourself. It certainly would be far easier for me as a judge to disregard that you have a constitutional right to represent yourself. That's how that has been interpreted, and say, that doesn't matter. I want an attorney. It'll be easier for me. Nope, I have to follow the law. And I've done that time and time again. I've had a number of trials with pro se defendants, one you all may be a little bit familiar with. But I did that because that was the right thing to do under the law, right? And in the process of presiding over that case, many people got to see my commitment to fairness, to order, and to justice. And that's how I run court every single day. It doesn't matter if there's 1 million people watching or there's just a couple of people in the courtroom. I will always, always be fair and impartial in how I deal with litigants and how I make decisions.
Did you get pushback for that? By the way, and this is a little bit more from that PBS article. Waukesha County Judge Jennifer Dorow became well known nationally for presiding over the trial of Darrell Brooks, who was convicted of 76 charges after driving a vehicle through a Waukesha Christmas parade and killing 6 people in November of 2021. Did you get pushback for not forcing? I don't know if that's possible, but no, you have to have an attorney. Did you get a lot of blowback for that?
I wouldn't say blowback. I'm aware of some of the commentary that was out there. And I think some people have a misunderstanding of what that right is and what it means when you're accused of a crime and you want to represent yourself.
Okay, so we have a couple questions here because we'll get to that because we're already up against our time. And this kind of ties in right here. So this race, February 21st, 13 days from now, that's the first one. 4 people on the ballot, 2 conservatives, 2 liberals. The top 2 would obviously assume it'd be 1 conservative, 1 liberal. Move on to the April 4th election. Is this election more about the February election, more about your opponent? Or is, when you look at it this way, like, okay, I have to, kind of get past this one. Or is it, no, it doesn't really matter. Like all 3 are kind of my, opponents right now. And this is the last part from the article, and it says, Dorow has been accused by Kelly, that would be your conservative opponent, Daniel Kelly, of using the Brooks case as a springboard for the race. I'm sure you've heard that before. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, it's an open seat. Justice Roggensack is retiring. So there are 4 candidates that want to be the next Wisconsin Supreme Court Justice. And by the way, Justice Roggensack has endorsed me as well. And what I would say is I would not be a credible candidate if it weren't for my 26-year legal career, 11 years on the trial court bench, a depth and breadth of experience that frankly no other candidate has. I also have something that no other candidate has, and that is I have broad appeal. This is a nonpartisan race. And the person who is going to win the April election needs to be able to draw from that and bring people together. I think the people of Wisconsin want to know that their judges and justices don't prejudge cases, haven't decided the case before the facts or the law have been analyzed. I mean, the bottom line is you have two candidates on the left who have said their minds are made up. The law doesn't matter, the facts don't matter. You know, as a judge over the last 11 years, right? The people that come before me, they're not just names on a piece of paper, right? They're litigants in front of me. I understand how the decisions that I make affect them. I mean, I've done family cases, civil cases, criminal cases. I've had almost 16,000 cases assigned to me.
What?
I've had police officers hundreds of times, right? Testifying, motion hearings where, did they have reasonable suspicion to stop a vehicle, probable cause for arrest, whether a confession should come in or not. Even with family cases, I've heard custody, placement, child support, maintenance. That's important because these types of cases, they also make their way up to the Supreme Court. And that's a perspective, along with that fairness and impartiality that people expect from judges and justices.
So there was a question here. So we're up against the time. So I just want to throw a few of these things in here. And I think you may have answered that. There's 24th. There are 4 cans in the belt. What sets you apart? So I think right now, though, for the most part, please correct me if I'm wrong. What sets you apart would probably be more so. I mean, people are likely either going to vote for you or for Dan Kelly. What would separate you from Dan Kelly? And I think you may have just kind of touched on that already.
What I would say, what separates me from all the candidates, all the other candidates, is that I have more law enforcement support than anyone. I am law enforcement's choice. I have 48 bipartisan sheriffs. I now have, I think, around 75, 80 police chiefs. You add to that prosecutors. And I am overwhelmingly supported by law enforcement. They understand how important this election is, and I could not be more proud to have their support.
I heard you were. I got a text message from. All right, so anytime we bring his name up, we always have to do this ding. I don't know why. It's a long story. Don't ask. Dave Wilson, Shelley Police Chief, friend of ours. He sent me a text a couple days ago. I think it was a couple days ago. It was a picture of you and he, and I'm like, where are you? And I don't know if he responded or not. I can't remember, but apparently you just met the Shelley Police Chief, Dave Wilson. I'm not sure if he's one of the people who have endorsed you or not.
He is.
Where did you? Oh, we did. Okay. So there you go. Breaking news right here. So where did you meet? Where were you?
So there was a police chiefs conference. I went to a reception that they were holding on Monday. And just walked around, talked to them, met them, shook their hands, thanked them for the work that they do, recognizing that oftentimes it's a thankless job under some pretty trying circumstances.
Mm-hmm. All right. And the last one here is, and I'm sorry, there's been a couple more, but we didn't get a chance to get to them. Where can we find more information about your campaign? Oh, somebody, Darlene already put it up. There you go. Judge Jennifer.
JudgeJennifer.com. We're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And I can't thank you enough.
And by the way, whoever set that up, JudgeJennifer.com, make sure you renew that domain, and then you can resell it later because there's going to be another Jennifer running for judge somewhere. You can sell something like $5,000. I'm just saying, you want to hold on to that one. Awesome. Is there anything else that you want? Okay, we could talk a lot longer, and after February 21st, we'll just assume we will have you back on after that, and we can get a little bit more into that next race and more about kind of where your stances and views and how you view the Supreme Court and the roles of a justice. But for now, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure we talked about that we didn't get a chance to?
Yeah, I have two things. One is, there is a left activist or political action group that is spending about $829,000. I'm not sure if it's weekly or just in between now and February 21st with negative attack ads against me. They've made it very, very clear who they do not want to run against in the April election. I just ask that your voters not, be hoodwinked by the distraction and the disinformation that's out there. But I need everyone's vote in order to get through this primary. It's incredibly important. And then the second thing would be, and I think this is really important to your voters as well, because it's something I'm hearing time and time again on the campaign trail. And that is, we need unity from the two conservative candidates. We do not want to repeat what happened this past fall. That is why I have pledged that if I am not the conservative candidate to get through the primary, and former Justice Dan Kelly is, that I unequivocally will support him, endorse him, and do what I can to make sure he is elected. He has not made that same promise.
Why don't more people do that? On
I
either side, Republicans, Democrats, conservatives, liberals, left, right, doesn't matter. Why don't more people do that?
I can only speak for myself, and I think it's really important. It's good to have primaries. It's good to see good people step up and run for office. It's not easy, but then we need to support one another if we're not the one that makes it through.
You think so? I mean, there's some things you don't want to, right? Like if my wife all of a sudden decided to divorce me and she's marrying someone else, I'm not going to endorse the dude. So, I mean, that's different, though. That's a little different. Awesome. Jennifer, thank you so very much for coming on. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you. I'd love to be back. Bye-bye, everyone.
I can't wait. I'm sure we will. Absolutely. Right? No matter what happens February 21st, we'll just have you back on sometime in March or April. How about that?
That'd be great.
All right. Special thank you to our guest today, Waukesha County Court Judge and Chief Judge of the Third Judicial District and conservative candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court, Jennifer Dorow, for taking the time to chat with us today. I'll see you right back here tomorrow morning at 8:30 when 7th Congressional District Congressman Tom Tiffany will be joining me for our monthly Breakfast with Tiffany show. Until then, for DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden saying thank you for watching, and as always, have a blessed day.